How on earth are you supposed to structure a literature-based dissertation? Is there a literature review chapter in it? What about a methodology? Where do you write about theory and all that kind of stuff? Stay tuned because I'm going to tell you. In this video, we'll cover all of that stuff and you'll go away with a framework to start writing your very own literature-based dissertation. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley and I've been supervising postgrad social science dissertations for the last 20 years. In that time, literature-based dissertations have become incredibly popular and every year more and more students choose to do them. But finding advice and reliable information on how exactly you should write these things, not very easy. But luckily for you, you have found this video in which we'll be covering what a literature-based dissertation is and the structure of a literature-based dissertation. First up, what is a literature-based dissertation and how is it different from a normal dissertation? In a literature-based dissertation, the entire dissertation is a comprehensive literature review. You're not collecting any data and you're not analysing any data. What you're doing instead is critically reviewing the literature. So you have your dissertation title and your research questions, like somebody doing a standard research-based dissertation would do, but your dissertation is very different from theirs because you don't get answers to those questions by collecting and analysing your own data. Instead, you look for answers to those questions in the existing literature. You go strategically digging around in the stuff that people have already produced, the books, the book chapters and the journal articles, to see if you can bring that together in a new and special way that answers your questions. Your original contribution to knowledge, or where you fill the gap, is with the new insights that you generate as a result of reviewing the literature. Think of your literature-based dissertation like knitting. You draw upon different strands and threads of the existing literature, some which might never have been connected before, and you knit them all together to create new, innovative insights into your topic. So, whilst you're not collecting or analysing any new data, you are making a contribution to knowledge. And that contribution to knowledge is going to come from your critical review of the existing literature. You are approaching that literature in a new way with new questions, so that's where you're going to fill the gap. It's as simple as that, really. Next up, structure. This is something that most students struggle with, largely because of the really confusing advice out there about literature-based dissertations. What tends to happen is that people doing literature-based dissertations try to squeeze their dissertation into the format of a research-based dissertation. So you end up with this kind of weird hybrid sort of dissertation that doesn't quite know what it is. It's not a research-based dissertation, it's not a literature-based dissertation, it's kind of trying to be a bit of both, and yeah, it's just a mess. And your examiner, whilst they're looking through this dissertation, they are going to become incredibly frustrated and incredibly annoyed because they just don't know what it is that they're looking at. They're going to be completely tearing their hair out, so that's not going to end well. But don't worry, that is not going to happen to you, because I'm now going to talk you through an outline structure that you can use for your literature-based dissertation. And we'll start off with the introduction. So the introduction, what needs to go in there? In the introduction, you are setting the stage for your dissertation. You are showing your examiner that you really know your stuff. Here, you need to explain your topic and make sure that you use different words and different terms to the actual title you've chosen. You need to write around it and express it in different ways because this shows that you're confident that you know what you're writing about. And it builds a really solid foundation for what's to come. Next up, you need to talk about context and background. So why does this topic matter and why is now an important time to look at it? You also need to outline the key terms and the definitions and the concepts around your topic. Don't just assume that your examiner is going to know what you're on about. They probably do, but that's not the point. The point is to demonstrate that you understand it. So if you're a criminology student, for example, doing your dissertation on reoffending or recidivism, how are you defining those terms? What definitions are you using and why? And why have you discounted other definitions that might exist? Next up, aims and objectives, and make sure you know the difference between them. Aims are what you want to achieve, and objectives are how you will get there. If you want a bit of extra help with your aims and objectives, check out this video right here. Make sure that your introduction includes a set of questions that you want the literature to answer. So take your title and spend some time brainstorming questions around it. What exactly do you want to find out from the literature? What is it that you need the literature to tell you? And lastly, the roadmap. So provide an overview of the chapter structure in order to guide your examiner through your dissertation. But make sure that you save this bit and write it up at the end rather than writing it up at the beginning, because the content and the order of your dissertation is highly likely to change. What you think it's going to look like right now is not what it will end up looking like. It will shift, it will move around. So save this section, save your time, don't write it up yet. And in the introduction, make sure that you're being really confident in your writing. I found, especially in literature-based dissertations, students tend to be a bit kind of apologetic and a bit hesitant in their writing. They use a lot of fluff and filler, and they over-explain and they repeat themselves. So please don't do that. In the introduction, start as you mean to go on. So be clear, be concise, and be direct. And if you need help with being those things, check out this video right here. Now, next up, approach or method. Now, this can be a separate chapter, or it can be a subsection within your introduction. It all depends on what your university or college want. So check the guidance that you've been given, and if it's not very clear, talk to your supervisor. Now, in my personal opinion, I think it should be a subsection of the introduction, because when it's a chapter in and of itself, there's a tendency for students to want to write loads and loads for it to make it a kind of equivalent length to the other chapters. And there's no need to do that in a literature-based dissertation, because you've got less to say about method than if you were doing a research-based dissertation. And the knock-on effect of that is that that eats into the space that you've got in the other chapters to critically review the literature. But that is just my opinion, so please make sure that you check with your college or university. So let's take a look at what goes into this part. So here in this section, chapter, whatever we want to call it, you write about how you searched for the literature that you included in your dissertation. So you're explaining your search strategies, you're outlining the keywords that you use to search for literature, you're noting the databases or the sources that you used, Google Scholar, for example. You're writing about the types of literature you included, and maybe you went outside of the academic literature, maybe as well as books and journal articles and the peer-reviewed material. Maybe you looked at some reports from third sector organisations or charities. Maybe you looked at some other types of literature. Here is the place to talk about that and to explain why you did it. And be really clear. Draw a boundary around your research. So what literature did you choose not to include? Where did you draw the line? There will be entire bodies of literature that are on the edges of your topic, and you'll be like, oh, I don't know whether to include that or not. Well, whatever you decide when you're asking yourself those questions, make a note of that and write it up in this section. And this is another one of those sections of your dissertation that you probably want to leave until the end, because you can only write about how you did something once you've done it. So don't waste your time writing it up now, because you're only going to have to come back and change it. For now, you just need to know what goes in it and maybe create a working document that you drop some notes into as you go. Okay, so that's the approach or the method. Let's get into the real meat of your dissertation now. And we're starting with a chapter on theories or theoretical frameworks. I think it's sensible to have a chapter about theories here, because a lot of students who write literature-based dissertations really struggle with how to incorporate theory into them. They get to the end of the dissertation and they're like, oh, there's no theory in here. I probably need to put some in. It is really difficult to add this stuff in at the end. The best literature-based dissertations are the ones that engage critically with theory all the way through. And the most effective way to do that is to put theory front and centre of your dissertation. In this chapter, you need to identify and evaluate the theories that are relevant to your topic. Essentially, a theory is a way of explaining something. So what explanations exist in and around your topic to account for what's going on with it? So, for example, when it comes to explaining why women appear to be overrepresented as victims of domestic abuse, feminist theory is a really prominent way of explaining this. Radical feminism talks about patriarchy, and it draws on that concept to explain why women appear to experience domestic abuse in greater numbers than men. Now, there will be theories that are relevant to your topic, and if you're stuck on this, ask your supervisor about them. Ask them which theories, which bodies of theory should I be looking at. Make sure you do a really good job of this chapter, because you'll need to refer back to those theories in the chapters that you write after this one. When you feel really confident with theory, it becomes so much easier to critically apply those theories throughout the rest of your thesis. If you need some help in terms of exactly how to handle and understand theory, check out this video. Right then, on to your next set of chapters, your theme chapters. Now, after your theory chapter, you're going to include another 3 or 4 chapters, and each of these chapters is going to explore a particular issue or theme that relates to your topic. Think of these chapters as pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. They all make a contribution towards understanding the bigger picture. This is going to vary tremendously depending on what you're actually doing your dissertation on, but here are some ideas. You might have a chapter about historical developments. In this chapter, critically explore the historical context of your research topic, tracing its evolution over time. That might involve looking at significant events or influential people who have shaped this topic. Provide some detailed examples and analyse the key ways in which history has shaped understandings of the topic. For instance, if your dissertation is about environmental conservation, you could discuss landmark environmental movements or key scientific discoveries that have impacted on conservation efforts. You could talk about the big names who've brought this issue to prominence and raised awareness about it. Bring theory in throughout here. So to what extent does theory help us understand what's gone on here? What does theory not help us understand? How valuable are the theories you wrote about earlier in making sense of what you've explored in this chapter? Next up, you could include a chapter about contemporary debates or controversies. In this chapter, you could focus on a current debate or controversy, identify different perspectives, different arguments or schools of thought about it, present contrasting viewpoints and analyse the reasons behind the disagreements. So why are people disagreeing about these things? For example, if your dissertation is about the ethics of artificial intelligence, you might decide to focus on something like AI's impact on the workforce, the implications of AI automation for the labour market. Here, you might explore the points around some people losing their jobs because of AI, but then you might consider the argument suggesting that AI actually creates new kinds of jobs. Again, bring theory in throughout this chapter. How much does theory actually help us understand what's been happening here? Are there any aspects that theory doesn't quite capture? And how valuable are the theories that you discussed earlier in making sense of what you've explored in this chapter? There might be a chapter on policy or practice implications. This chapter would involve examining practical implications, exploring things like policies, initiatives, and interventions. Analyse existing policies or practices related to your topic and assess their effectiveness. For instance, if your dissertation is on education reform, you could discuss some of the policies that have been implemented around that and consider whether they've actually worked, for whom they've worked or not worked, and why that's the case. And again, don't forget to think theory all the way through this chapter too. To what extent does theory help us make sense of what's been going on here? Are there any gaps or limitations where theory falls short? And how useful are the theories that you wrote about earlier in helping you understand what you've discovered in this chapter? There could be a chapter on cross-cultural or comparative analysis. In this kind of chapter, you could explore the cross-cultural or comparative aspects of your research topic. Compare different cultures, societies, or regions to gain some insights into how your topic is perceived, understood, or addressed in diverse contexts. Provide specific examples and highlight the significance of doing this kind of analysis in order to get a comprehensive understanding of your research topic. For instance, if your dissertation is about leadership styles, you could compare leadership approaches in different parts of the world, considering cultural values, societal norms, and the implications of those. And again, you know exactly what I'm going to say here. We're all about theory. So how much does theory truly shed light on the stuff you've explored in this chapter? Are there any aspects that theory fails to explain? And how effective are the theories that you looked at in your earlier chapter in terms of making sense of what happens in other parts of the country or other parts of the world or in other cultures? And lastly, you might want to include a case study chapter or a series of chapters each looking at a different case study. This would involve looking at cases to explore some of the key concepts or ideas around your topic. So, for example, if your dissertation is about entrepreneurship, you could present case studies of successful entrepreneurs, analysing their strategies, their impact, the lessons learned. And again, you've guessed it, don't forget the theory. To what extent does theory actually provide us with insights into what's occurred here? Are there any areas where theory doesn't quite capture the full picture? And how valuable are the theories that you explored earlier in helping you understand what's happened in these cases? Okay, so those are some ideas for your theme chapters. The next thing you need to do is bring all of this together in the discussion and conclusion. And this is another one of those things where some colleges and universities are completely fine with you combining these chapters and calling a chapter discussion and conclusions. Other universities and colleges want them completely separate, so please make sure that you check before you start writing them. So let's take a look at the discussion first. Here's where you look at everything you've done in the previous chapters and consider how that all comes together to create new insights into your topic. How do all the chapters combine to provide you with answers to the questions that you had at the beginning, the questions that you included in the introduction chapter? Collectively, does the literature answer those questions? Which parts of the literature do you need to bring together to develop answers to those questions? And are there some questions that the literature collectively has not answered? And most importantly, having done all of this, what new insights do you now have into your topic? As a result of knitting all this literature together, what can you say? What is new? What new light have you shed on the topic? What new questions have emerged as a result of your literature review? Questions that might indeed need more research in the future. What does your analysis of the literature suggest on the whole about the theories that have been used to understand your topic? Are they great? Do they explain everything? Or is there a need for the development of some new theory? And what would that new theory need to include or take into account that the established theories didn't? Essentially, the discussion provides an opportunity to delve into the complexities and the nuances of the literature when you look across it, when you consider everything together. And finally, your conclusion. The conclusion is like the final wrap-up of your entire dissertation. It brings together the main things that you've learned and discovered from your research, showing why it's all important. It is a short and sweet summary of the most important points you've discussed throughout your dissertation, and it highlights how your dissertation is unique and impactful. The conclusion also looks at the bigger picture. It considers what your findings mean for the field. It suggests ideas for future research. It's the part that gives your dissertation a sense of closure and wraps everything up nicely. To sum it up, while the discussion section dives deep into analysing and understanding the literature, the conclusion section takes a step back to give an overall summary and a reflection on your entire research journey. The discussion section is like zooming in, whilst the conclusion section is like zooming out. In the discussion section, you are zooming in, looking at the complexities and the nuances of the literature, but in the conclusion, you are zooming out. You are looking at the broader significance and the implications of your study. And that's it, we're done. So hopefully now you know what a literature-based dissertation is, you know what it looks like, and you've got a bit of an idea as to the kind of things you want to include in yours. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments and I will be back next week with more dissertation tips.